Hey there, America Tonight. We're diving into the wild world of tariffs. You know, those little taxes on imports that seem about as exciting as watching paint dry? But hold on to your hats, folks, because tariffs have a history as dramatic as a Real Housewives reunion. For much of US history, tariffs were the Beyoncé of government revenue, the main act, the breadwinner, the whole damn show. They paid for everything from roads to wars, all without you having to hand over a single penny of income tax. Imagine that. But like all good things, the tariffs' reign eventually came to an end. The rise of the income tax and the global push for free trade knocked tariffs off their pedestal. Don't think for a second that tariffs rode off into the sunset, though. Oh no, they're back, baby. And this time they're sporting a MAGA hat and a Twitter account. That's right, folks. We're talking about the Trump tariffs. Back in the good old days before Instagram influencers and avocado toast, America needed a way to fund its government. Enter tariffs. From the late 1700s to the early 1900s, tariffs were the primary source of federal revenue. Think of it like this. You want to buy a fancy new carriage from England? Fine. But you're going to have to pay a little extra to get it into the US. That extra cash went straight into the government's coffers, funding all sorts of important projects. These tariffs weren't just about raising money, though. They were also used to protect American industries from foreign competition. By slapping a hefty tax on imported goods, the government made American-made products more appealing to consumers. This strategy seemed like a good idea at the time, but it also had its downsides. Tariffs could lead to higher prices for consumers and retaliatory tariffs from other countries, sparking trade wars that benefited no one. Everything changed in 1913 with the ratification of the 16th Amendment. This little amendment paved the way for the federal income tax, which would soon become the government's primary source of revenue. With a new way to fund itself, the government's reliance on tariffs began to dwindle. Tariffs didn't disappear entirely, but they were no longer the star of the show. They were more like the opening act, still important but not the main event. This shift away from tariffs was further fueled by the Great Depression. The economic turmoil of the 1930s highlighted the dangers of protectionist policies like high tariffs. As a result, the US began to embrace the idea of free trade, the idea that goods and services should be able to flow freely between countries without being subjected to tariffs or other barriers. After World War II, the US emerged as a global economic powerhouse. Keen on promoting free trade and rebuilding the war-torn world, the US championed the creation of institutions like the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, which later became the World Trade Organization, WTO. These organizations aimed to reduce tariffs and other trade barriers, fostering international trade and cooperation. The world was becoming increasingly interconnected, and tariffs were seen as an impediment to global economic growth. For decades, this trend toward free trade continued. Tariffs were gradually reduced and global trade flourished. Countries specialized in producing what they were good at, and consumers enjoyed a wider variety of goods and services at lower prices. Of course, no system is perfect. While free trade brought many benefits, it also led to job losses in certain sectors as companies moved production to countries with lower labor costs. Fast forward to 2016, and a new player enters the tariff game, Donald J. Trump. Campaigning on a platform of economic nationalism and America First, Trump promised to bring back manufacturing jobs and reduce the trade deficit. His weapon of choice, you guessed it, tariffs. Trump argued that previous administrations had negotiated bad trade deals that put American workers at a disadvantage. He vowed to use tariffs as leverage to renegotiate these deals and protect American industries from what he saw as unfair foreign competition. In 2018, Trump slapped tariffs on billions of dollars worth of goods imported from China, sparking a trade war between the world's two largest economies. He also imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from allies like Canada, Mexico, and the European Union, arguing that these imports threatened national security. Section 6, Retaliation and Repercussions. Trump's tariff blitzkrieg didn't go unanswered. China retaliated with tariffs of its own on American goods, targeting key agricultural products like soybeans and pork. The European Union, Canada, and Mexico also retaliated with tariffs on American goods. These tit-for-tat tariffs had a ripple effect throughout the global economy. Businesses faced higher costs, consumers paid more for goods, and uncertainty cast a pall over the global economic outlook. The agricultural sector was hit particularly hard by the trade war. China, once a major buyer of American soybeans, turned to other suppliers like Brazil. American farmers found themselves with a surplus of crops and nowhere to sell them. While Trump argued that his tariffs were necessary to protect American jobs and industries, many economists argued that they were counterproductive, hurting the very people they were supposed to help. Section 7, Biden's Balancing Act. When Joe Biden took office in 2021, he inherited a trade war with China and strained relations with key allies. While Biden criticized Trump's tariff-heavy approach, he didn't immediately reverse course. The Biden administration maintained many of the Trump-era tariffs, arguing that they provided leverage in trade negotiations with China. However, Biden also sought to repair relationships with allies, lifting tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from the European Union. The Biden administration also focused on addressing some of the underlying issues in the US-China trade relationship, such as China's intellectual property practices and its subsidies for state-owned enterprises. However, tensions between the US and China remained high, and the trade war continued to cast a shadow over the global economy. Section 8. The 2024 Tariff Tightrope. As the 2024 election approached, trade policy once again took center stage. Trump, campaigning for a return to the White House, vowed to ramp up his tariff campaign, threatening even higher tariffs on goods from China and other countries. Trump's 2024 tariff proposals sent shockwaves through the business community and sparked fears of a renewed trade war. Economists warned that higher tariffs would lead to higher prices for consumers, job losses, and slower economic growth. The prospect of a renewed trade war under a second Trump administration created uncertainty for businesses and investors worldwide. The global economy, already grappling with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine, faced the prospect of further disruption. Section 9. Conclusion: A taxing legacy. From their humble beginnings as America's primary source of revenue to their resurgence as a tool of economic nationalism, tariffs have played a pivotal role in US history. Once seen as a relic of the past, tariffs have roared back into the spotlight, sparking trade wars and dividing nations. While tariffs can be a legitimate tool to protect domestic industries and address unfair trade practices, their use is fraught with risk. History has shown that tariffs can lead to higher prices for consumers, retaliatory measures from other countries, and damage to the global economy. As the world becomes increasingly interconnected, the stakes of trade policy are higher than ever. Whether tariffs will be used to build bridges or erect walls remains to be seen. One thing is certain: the tariff tale is far from over.